The tradition of starting the day with a cup of coffee has been a global obsession for centuries. There are few beverages as satisfying and heartwarming as a freshly brewed cup of coffee. Over the past decade, consumers have heightened their expectations for the foods and beverages they enjoy. This trend has fueled the demand and rapid growth of the world of gourmet specialty coffees. The past few years have seen an explosion of smaller roasting operations that are dedicated to quality rather than volume. This trend is now sweeping the globe. The producers of this video have a combined 35-year background in food service and specialty coffee. This video was created to provide the viewer with an overall understanding of coffee and all the information necessary to become knowledgeable and proficient in producing traditional, authentic espresso beverages and quality drip coffee. We will cover the following: a brief history of coffee, understanding the coffee bean, the roasting and blending of coffee, espresso equipment, extracting perfect espresso, the fine art of steaming and foaming milk, traditional espresso bar beverages, fundamentals of brewed coffee preparation, and finally, cleaning, maintenance, and safety. Coffee was first discovered in northern Africa, in an area we know today as Ethiopia. A popular legend refers to a goat herder by the name of Kaldi, who observed his goats acting unusually frisky after eating berries from a bush. Curious about this phenomena, Kaldi tried eating the berries himself. He found that these berries gave him a renewed energy. The news of this energy-laden fruit quickly spread throughout the region. Monks, hearing about this amazing fruit, dried the berries so that they could be transported to distant monasteries. They reconstituted these berries in water, ate the fruit, and drank the liquid to provide stimulation for a more awakened time of prayer. Coffee berries were transported from Ethiopia to the Arabian Peninsula and were first cultivated in what today is the country of Yemen. From there, coffee traveled to Turkey, where coffee beans were roasted for the first time over open fires. The roasted beans were crushed and then boiled in water, creating a crude version of the beverage we enjoy today. Coffee first arrived on the European continent by means of Venetian trade merchants. Once in Europe, this new beverage fell under harsh criticism from the Catholic Church. Many felt the Pope should ban coffee, calling it the drink of the devil. To their surprise, the Pope, already a coffee drinker, blessed coffee, declaring it a truly Christian beverage. Coffee houses spread quickly across Europe, becoming centers for intellectual exchange. Many great minds of Europe used this beverage and forum as a springboard to heighten thought and creativity. In the 1700s, coffee found its way to the Americas by means of a French infantry captain who nurtured one small plant on its long journey across the Atlantic. This one plant, transplanted to the island of Martinique, became the predecessor of over 19 million trees on the island within 50 years. It was from this humble beginning that the coffee plant found its way to the rest of the tropical regions of South and Central America. Coffee was declared the national drink of the then colonized United States by the Continental Congress in protest of the excessive tax on tea levied by the British Crown. Espresso, a recent innovation in the way to prepare coffee, obtained its origin in 1822 with the innovation of the first crude espresso machine in France. The Italians perfected this wonderful machine and were the first to manufacture it. Espresso has become such an integral part of Italian life and culture that there are presently over 200,000 espresso bars in Italy.
The cultural aspect in Italy of espresso drinking is very deep and very embedded into every individual. And there are thousands of espresso bars in most Italian cities, and they're all over. They're a place where you go down and you meet friends, a place where you go and have an espresso if that's what you like, or a cappuccino, and it stops right there. You don't have a chance of finding talls, doubles, singles, syrups. So it's more than a place that you try to go and get in exchange for a monetary transaction. It's more than supply and demand. It's more than an exchange of products and money. What it really is, it becomes a cultural and social experience among friends that have met there not for one day, not for 2 days, not for a week, maybe for years. And they've met there to enjoy talking about politics, to enjoy talking about whatever it is that their families have just done the day before, and enjoy talking about those topics, especially over a cup of espresso and cappuccino.
Today, coffee is a giant global industry, employing more than 20 million people. This commodity ranks second only to petroleum in terms of dollars traded worldwide. With over 400 billion cups consumed every year, coffee is the world's most popular beverage. If you can imagine, in Brazil alone, over 5 million people are employed in the cultivation and harvesting of over 3 billion coffee plants. Sales of premium specialty coffees in the United States have reached the multi-billion-dollar level and are increasing significantly on an annual basis. What is coffee? Coffee is the seed of a cherry from a tree, which grows from sea level to approximately 6,000 feet in a narrow subtropical belt around the world. Coffee trees are an evergreen and grow to heights of 20 feet. To simplify harvesting, the trees are pruned to 8 to 10 feet. Coffee cherries ripen at different times, so they are predominantly picked by hand. It takes approximately 2,000 Arabica cherries to produce just 1 pound of roasted coffee. Since each cherry contains 2 beans, your 1 pound of coffee is derived from 4,000 coffee beans. The average coffee tree only produces 1 to 2 pounds of roasted coffee per year and takes 4 to 5 years to produce its first crop. The coffee plant first produces delicate clusters of white blossoms, resembling jasmine in shape and scent. These blossoms last only a few days. Small green coffee cherries then begin to appear and ripen to yellow, red, and finally almost black within 6 to 9 months. Once the coffee cherries are picked, they are transported for processing. The fruit is then removed from the seed by one of 2 methods: the natural or dry process, where the cherries are dried in the sun or in dryers, and the fruit is then separated from the bean by processing them through a mechanical husker, or by a superior soaking method known as the wet process, which produces beans that are referred to as washed coffees. The green beans are then dried, sized, sorted, graded, and selected, usually all by hand. The beans are then bagged and are ready for shipment to local roasters around the world. Few products we use require so much in terms of human effort. The 2 commercially significant species of coffee beans are Coffea arabica, or Arabica, and Coffea robusta, or Robusta. Arabica beans grow best at altitudes over 3,000 feet. This species produces superior quality coffees, which possess the greatest flavor and aromatic characteristics. They typically contain half the caffeine of the Robusta beans. Arabica production represents 75% of the world's coffee trade. However, only 10% of this meets specialty coffee standards. Robusta beans are usually grown at lower elevations. Robusta trees are easier to grow, produce higher yields, and are more disease-resistant than the Arabica species. Robusta beans usually possess a woody, astringent flavor. They are used when a lower price or additional caffeine is desired. A small percentage is typically added to many Italian espresso blends for the additional crema and complexity they contribute. In addition to the species of the coffee, many other factors contribute to the overall quality of the green beans: seed stock, plantation location, soil composition, altitude, weather conditions, fertilization, cultivation, harvesting, and processing methods will all have a dramatic influence on the finished product. Caffeine, the naturally occurring chemical stimulant found in coffee, has been a debated health issue worldwide over the past several decades. A single shot of espresso can contain less than half the caffeine of a cup of brewed institutional coffee. This is due in part to the shorter period of time that the ground coffee is in contact with the water. Also, many price-driven canned coffees contain a significant portion of Robusta beans. In order for a coffee to be classified as decaffeinated, at least 97% of the caffeine must be removed from the bean. Some flavor is generally lost in the process which decaffeinates the coffee bean. This removal is achieved by one of several methods. The conventional, traditional, or European process, which removes caffeine by means of soaking the green coffee beans in water containing a chemical solvent. The Swiss water process, which removes the caffeine from the chemical-free soaking water with charcoal filters. And the CO2 method, which decaffeinates the beans with liquid carbon dioxide. Since any remaining chemical residues in the bean will dissipate during the roasting process, we have been told that all the methods have been proven effective and safe. We suggest you choose your decaffeinated coffee on the basis of its flavor. After quality coffee beans are obtained, the most important phase of production of gourmet coffee begins: the roasting and the blending. A good roaster must be part artist and part scientist to maintain quality and consistency. It is during the roasting process that the sugars and other carbohydrates within the bean become caramelized, creating a substance which is known as the coffee oil. Technically, this fragile chemical is not actually an oil since it's water-soluble, but it is what gives coffee its flavor and aroma. Specialty coffees are generally roasted in small batches. The two most common roasting methods are drum roasting and hot air roasting. Drum-type roasting machines roast the coffee beans as they tumble in a rotating drum, which is typically heated by gas or wood. When the desired roast is achieved, the beans are poured into a cooling hopper to keep them from overcooking. The hot air roaster, also known as a fluid bed roaster, roasts the coffee beans as they tumble on a current of hot air.
I brought with me today 3 different types of coffee beans, all from the same country of origin, to show a little bit about where the coffees come from. This is called parchment coffee, or pergamino. This is how the coffee looks from the plantation once it's been harvested and dried. You'll note that each coffee bean is in its own little jacket, and prior to shipping, the little jacket is removed by a cleaner and revealing underneath the green coffee bean. This is this exact same coffee bean once this outer husk has been removed. And this to a roaster is normally what they receive at their facility. The green coffee, it's sorted, it's cleaned, it's graded by density or by size. The final bean, once it's been roasted, as you can see, is larger. Coffee beans expand during roasting and they actually lose weight. They change dramatically going from each of the 3 forms.
Most green coffee is roasted at approximately 400 degrees. A lightly roasted bean may range in color from cinnamon to a light chocolate tan. Lighter roasts are generally not used for espresso since they produce a sharper, more acidic taste than do darker roasts. Darker roasts, in contrast, have a fuller flavor, approaching a bittersweet tang. The amount of oil drawn to the surface of the bean increases proportionately to the length of roasting time. As the roast darkens, caffeine and acidity decrease proportionately. Dark roasts can range in color from a medium chocolate brown with a satin-like luster to an almost black bean with an oily appearance. The darker the roast, the more you will taste the char rather than the flavor of the bean. Extreme dark roasts will tend to have a smoky flavor and are better suited for brewed coffee rather than espresso. Many roasters refer to the following terms concerning the degree of roast from light to dark: cinnamon, medium-high, city, full city, French, and finally espresso or Italian roast. On the west coast of the U.S., French roast is the term generally used to describe the darkest roast. It's important for you to understand that these terms have no relationship to where the coffee is grown or roasted. With more than 100 coffee growing regions in the world, each producing beans with distinctive characteristics, we believe proper blending is essential to the balance of flavors necessary to create superior espresso. A single coffee bean will generally not possess the complexity necessary for great espresso. Many espresso blends will contain 3 to 7 different types of beans. The experienced roaster, with his knowledge of each bean, artfully combines them to create the desired blend of flavors. The roaster's blending knowledge is usually a closely guarded secret. In the United States, 100% Arabica beans are generally used for gourmet espresso blends. As we mentioned earlier, in Italy, some Robusta beans will oftentimes be added for the additional crema, caffeine, and complexity they contribute to the blend. The Italians possess generations of expertise in the art of blending coffees for espresso.
Arguments still exist among roasters as to which should occur first, the roasting or the blending.
Blending together in the roaster or roasting each varietal individually and then blending. And the correct way, I shouldn't say correct, realistically, for the majority, the correct way is to roast the varietals individually, because each varietal has a peak temperature to bring the full taste out of that varietal, and then do their blending. There are some blends that actually can be blended and roasted together. Very few, very, very few.
Freshly roasted beans will release hundreds of chemical substances in the form of vapors. A day or two will generally be required for these gases to dissipate before the beans will reveal their optimal flavor characteristics. Today, many quality roasters are packaging their beans in airtight bags with a one-way valve which allows the gases to escape without the beans being exposed to the damaging air. This type of packaging should help retard flavor deterioration. If beans are not packaged this way, or once beans packaged airtight are exposed to the air, they will begin to deteriorate. Roasts where oils are exposed on the surface of the bean are much more vulnerable. Once exposed to the air, and if properly stored, beans will stay reasonably fresh for 7 to 10 days. We recommend storing beans in a clean, dry, airtight container in a cool, dark place. We do not recommend storing beans in a refrigerator because coffee tends to absorb flavors. Freezing coffee beans can also have a damaging effect and is not recommended unless the beans must be stored for a prolonged period of time.
Ideally, you should strive to purchase and use up your supply of roasted beans on a weekly basis. What exactly is espresso? And by the way, it's pronounced espresso, not espresso.
Espresso refers to a special method of preparing coffee. The roasted coffee beans are ground to a very fine consistency, hard packed into a small metal filter basket, and then inserted into a specialized machine which drives the brewing water through the coffee grounds under significant pressure. This process releases the oils from the coffee, producing a thick, concentrated extract. The espresso method magnifies the aroma and flavor of the coffee.
Making great espresso drinks is not difficult if you start with good coffee, have the proper equipment, and understand the various techniques and procedures. We've discussed some important factors in selecting a particular coffee blend and roast to meet the demands of your customers. We will now show you the equipment necessary to create authentic espresso beverages. You are more than likely to be working on one of the following 3 types of espresso machines:
A manual, semi-automatic, or an automatic. These 3 machines have the same basic components, but the overall operation is slightly different. The manual machine is one of the older designs and drives the water through the grounds into the cup with the manipulation of a lever, which compresses the water with the aid of a piston. The second type of machine, the semi-automatic, uses an electronic pump to push the water through the coffee. The operator must manually start and stop the flow of water by manipulating a control. The third type of machine is a variation of the semi-automatic machine called the automatic. It dispenses a pre-programmed portion of water through the coffee. The desired amount of water to be dispensed is selected by activating one of the preset buttons. The operator may select one of the following: a short or long single shot, or a short or long double shot. All of these machines will also have a control for a continuous pour of pressure. Regardless to which type of machine is used, it is imperative that your machine will produce a sufficient pressure of 130 pounds per square inch for proper extraction. Reach and maintain a temperature at the group head of 192 to 198 degrees Fahrenheit. and can produce strong and prolonged steam for heating and foaming milk. Some machines will have gauges or indicators to monitor the temperature, pressure, or the amount of water in the boiler.
Most of your better machines have some sort of gauge on the machine, usually called a manometer or a dual manometer in this case, indicating both boiler pressure and water pressure. The top half generally is going to be boiler pressure indicated in bars, the operating pressure being anywhere from 0.8 to 0.2 bars. The lower gauge is going to indicate water pressure. When a machine is idle or brewing coffee, it will indicate the water line pressure or city line pressure. And when it's brewing, it's going to indicate pump pressure, which should be operating at 9 atmospheres. Over on the right side of the machine, we have a manual here, which is for manual filling.
The unit on one side. The most important feature to be familiar with is the grind adjustment control. This will allow you to adjust the grinding surfaces closer together to create a finer grind and further apart to achieve a coarser grind. A good barista may have to adjust the grind several times a day. The rate of extraction may be affected by changes in weather conditions such as humidity and temperature. The proper rate of extraction can only be restored by readjusting the grind. We will cover proper extraction rates in detail when we discuss extracting the perfect shot of espresso in the next section of this video.
To maintain the optimal flavor characteristics, coffee should not be ground ahead of time. In fact, you should attempt to grind just enough coffee for each order and never grind more coffee than you anticipate needing for the next 15 to 30 minutes. Coffee, once ground, begins to lose its flavor and aroma almost immediately. There are many necessary factors, all contributing to the perfect shot of espresso.
First, start with fresh, superior coffee beans, specifically roasted and blended for espresso. Next, high-quality, well-maintained espresso equipment is essential. Finally, and most important, apply the techniques and procedures of proper espresso preparation.
It is our opinion that 80% of the quality of an espresso beverage is achieved by understanding the nuances of proper preparation. Failure to adhere to these principles will result in an undesirable and unpalatable beverage.
We feel that of all the factors, the grind is the most important. As we mentioned earlier, this will be something that you will need to monitor constantly. A good benchmark is to adjust the grind until your ground coffee attains a powder-like consistency with a slight gritty feeling to the touch. The best and most analytical test to assure the proper grind is trial and error with test extractions. After the proper dose and tamp, which we will talk about next, your single shot, a 3/4 ounce to 1 ounce extraction, should be achieved in approximately 25 to 30 seconds. These time and volume parameters are merely references in assessing the proper rate of extraction. In addition to these, there are some visual indicators which will serve as a better gauge when judging the perfect shot of espresso. First, if the operator is using fresh, good quality beans, the extraction should have the consistency of warm honey and be a deep rust color as it flows out of the portafilter. The Italians say the stream of espresso should resemble la coda della topo, which means the tail of a mouse. Perhaps a better comparison would be a strand of cooked spaghetti. If your streams of espresso are larger in diameter than this, chances are your extraction is too fast and you will need to adjust the grind finer. The extracted shot should have a thick, rust-colored top layer, which is called crema. A good indicator of when the extraction should be stopped is when the streams of espresso pouring from the portafilter lighten in color and they begin to produce a pale dot on the surface of this crema. At this point, all the flavorful elements have been removed from the coffee. Continued extraction will only result in producing the bitter elements of the bean. To check the consistency of your crema, a small amount of granulated sugar can be sprinkled on top. If the crema is thick and rich, the sugar should float for several seconds. As we mentioned earlier, most espresso bars change the consistency of their grind several times during the course of a day to maintain the proper rate of extraction. Remember, if the grind is too coarse, the extraction will be fast, resulting in an under-extracted shot. This will produce espresso with minimal body and crema and a sour flavor. If the grind is too fine, the extraction will be slow, resulting in over-extraction. This will produce an excessively bitter espresso. The correct grind will allow the precise volume of water to pass through the coffee in the ideal period of time, producing a thick, concentrated, smooth shot of espresso.
Because the proper rate of extraction is the most misunderstood principle in espresso bars today, let's now look at multiple extractions to help reinforce your understanding.
Too fast. Just right. Too slow. Too fast. Perfect. It is necessary and actually critical for the portafilter to remain in the machine at all times. The reason for this is the heat generated by the machine will keep the portafilter at the necessary temperature for proper extraction. If the portafilter is cold, critical heat will be lost when the hot water comes in contact with the cold metal, resulting in insufficient water temperature to achieve the desired extraction. The dose refers to the amount of coffee deposited into the portafilter. Typically, 7 to 8 grams are used for a single shot, and 14 to 16 grams for a double shot. Most portafilter baskets will have a fill line indicating the proper amount of coffee needed after compaction. It will be necessary to fill the portafilter with ground coffee higher than the level of the fill line, so it will be at the fill line after being compacted by the tamp. The compaction of these grounds into the portafilter is known as the tamp. Most espresso machines come with a tool designed for this purpose. Most grinders will also come equipped with a protruded piece that will accomplish something similar. However, we do not feel that a grinder tamp can achieve the desired result. A firm, even tamp is essential. Typically, 40 to 50 pounds of pressure should be applied to properly compact the coffee. For this reason, we prefer the individual handheld tamper. Look for one which closely matches the diameter of your filter basket and is comfortable to hold. Begin by leveling the coffee in your filter basket with your finger. Next, apply a light compaction to assure that the coffee is level. Then, gently tap the side of the portafilter with the handle end of the tamper to knock loose any coffee which may be clinging to the side of the filter basket. To avoid damaging the portafilter, tap the portafilter on the thick protruding cleat, which locks into the group head. Also, do not tap with the compacting surface of the tamper because this will mar its surface and cause the ground coffee to stick to the tamper. Next, hard pack the coffee with an even downward twisting motion. This will ensure that the pressurized water will be forced through the grounds evenly. If the coffee is not firmly packed, the water may blast a hole through the grounds and will follow the path of least resistance, resulting in an uneven extraction. Always be sure to brush any excess coffee grounds from the rim of the portafilter with the palm of your hand before inserting it back into the group head. This will ensure a snug fit and help avoid damage to the rubber gasket located in the group head. If the rate of extraction is not correct, you will need to dispose of the shot and adjust the grind to reattain the proper rate of extraction. Never attempt to control the rate of extraction by varying the pressure you apply to the tamp. Upon completion of the extraction, remove the portafilter and give several swift hits to the knockbox to dispose of the used grounds. A good indication that the grind and tamp are correct is if the ejected grounds form a firm, semi-dry wafer. It is extremely difficult for different operators to apply the same pressure when tamping. We suggest dedicating one person to the tamping function when multiple operators are working at the same time. Because coffee is approximately 98 to 99% water, it almost goes without mention that water quality is essential. In most areas, an inline water filter will be necessary to attain acceptable water quality.
Now let's review what it takes to extract the perfect shot of espresso.
First, start with a quality coffee, roasted and blended for espresso. Be sure your portafilter always remains in the machine to maintain the proper temperature. Dispense the proper dose of ground coffee for the desired extraction. Hard pack the coffee with a firm and consistent tamp. Place the portafilter back into the group head, start the brew cycle, taking note of the extraction time, volume, and the visual indicators we discussed. Judge the result of your shot by the color and amount of crema produced. Adjust the grind if necessary. The art of steaming and foaming milk for lattes and cappuccinos is achieved by using the steaming wand of your espresso machine. This wand injects hot steam into your pitcher of milk. Technique is critical to produce a fine, velvety, wet, small-celled foam. To the inexperienced or uneducated operator, foam is often thought of as a tasteless collection of large, dry milk bubbles spooned on top of coffee. The taste of correctly made foam will not only enhance the flavor of espresso, but deliver an almost dessert-like quality to your cappuccino or latte. Heating milk with steam alters its chemical composition, creating a different and wonderful flavor that harmonizes when combined with espresso. Generally, the lower the fat content of the milk, the easier it will be to create a large volume of foam. Skim or 2% milk will foam easier than whole milk. However, whole milk will create a richer, denser foam with a more velvety texture. Other variables are the temperature of the milk when steaming begins, the size and material of the steaming pitcher, the machine's steaming power, and of course, steaming technique. We feel that the most critical factor is the temperature of the milk when steaming begins. Cold milk is essential. Because of this, we suggest only steaming approximately the amount of milk needed for each order. If hot milk is left over after preparing drinks for an order, always place the pitcher back into the refrigerator. New cold milk can be combined with a small amount of leftover milk for the next order. Milk steams best in a stainless steel pitcher. The size should be determined by the volume of drinks your coffee bar generates. Generally, the size of pitchers will range from 12 to 32 ounces. The small pitcher is ideal for a single 6 to 8 ounce drink. Larger or multiple drinks will require the larger size steaming pitcher.
Through the years, we have seen numerous techniques for foaming milk. We will share with you now the technique that has proven most successful for us.
Fill your pitcher 1/3, but never more than half full of cold milk. If you fill the pitcher fuller than this, there will not be sufficient room for the milk to expand during steaming. The volume of milk will at least double during the steaming process. With experience, you will be able to estimate the amount of milk which will be necessary for your drink order without having a significant amount of milk left over. Next, purge the steaming wand into the drip pan of the espresso machine. This will remove any water that may have condensed inside the wand. You will not want to inject this water into your milk. Be sure to exercise caution when working with the steaming wand so as to avoid burn injuries. Now, submerge the wand totally under the surface of the milk toward the center of the pitcher. Quickly turn on the steam valve to full power. Be careful not to allow the tip of the wand to surface above the milk, otherwise large, tasteless bubbles will result. Next, slowly lower the pitcher until the tip of the wand is just below the surface of the milk and slightly off-center. You should hear this intermittent hissing sound as the air and steam are injected into the milk. The proper positioning of the wand in the pitcher is necessary to create the desired circulation. Your goal is to achieve a rapid, swirling circulation of the milk in the pitcher. The milk should remain liquid in appearance during the entire steaming process. If larger bubbles or a cap of foam accumulates on the surface of the milk, adjust the position of the pitcher to reestablish a visible swirling motion. This will roll under any larger bubbles and create the desired velvety texture. You will need to slowly lower the pitcher as the milk expands to keep the nozzle of the steaming wand in the proper position in relationship to the surface of the milk. The milk should be heated to at least 140 degrees, but never hotter than 160 degrees. It is almost impossible to heat milk to the exact temperature without the use of a thermometer. We highly recommend that you incorporate a thermometer on each of your steaming pitchers. We usually start to shut the steam valve off at 140 degrees. If a thermometer is not available, an experienced barista can use an alternative touch method to estimate the temperature of the milk. Hold one hand on the steaming pitcher during the steaming process. When the pitcher becomes too hot to touch, the milk temperature will usually be approaching 130 to 140 degrees. The milk needs to be heated to 140 degrees to meet the accepted health department standard. Heating milk beyond 160 degrees will result in scalded milk and will produce an unpleasant flavor and aroma. Be sure the wand tip remains fully submerged until the steam valve is totally closed. Otherwise, once again, perfect foam can be ruined in an instant at the end of the process. If some larger bubbles should occur by accident during the steaming process, tapping the bottom of the pitcher on the countertop will help condense the foam and break larger bubbles. For wand maintenance and sanitation purposes, it is advisable to once again purge the wand after steaming and immediately wipe the wand with a clean, damp towel. The foamed milk is usable for lattes for up to a minute or two. We advise almost immediate use when preparing a cappuccino. In the rare case that a customer requests a drink with no foam, steamed milk can be produced by keeping the tip of the wand fully submerged during the entire process.
We have observed many incorrect and unforgivable steaming techniques being practiced in espresso serving establishments. We will now demonstrate what you should never see or hear. We realize that the process of frothing milk and creating perfect foam can be intimidating. Like any art form, after learning the proper fundamentals, practice will be necessary to feel comfortable and to become proficient. Let's review the techniques necessary to create correctly foamed milk.
The correct size stainless steel steaming pitcher. The proper amount of cold milk. The purging of the steaming wand. Correct wand placement and milk circulation throughout the steaming process, heating the milk to the proper temperature, repurging and cleaning the wand.
Once you have mastered the fundamentals of proper extraction and steaming and foaming, you will be ready to create wonderful espresso drinks. We will now demonstrate the basic espresso bar beverages. Any drinks you have experienced that are not addressed in this section are only variations on these basic beverages.
The straight shot of espresso. All espresso drinks start with the foundation of the straight shot of espresso. The straight shot is the most commonly consumed coffee beverage in Italy. It is, of course, the only true way to judge the quality and consistency of your blend of espresso. In the United States, the straight shot will be a very small percentage of your sales for two reasons. The palate of most Americans is not accustomed to the flavor intensity of the straight shot, and many domestic coffee roasters produce an over-roasted bitter bean, which will leave an undesirable bite in the mouth of the consumer. A good coffee, when extracted as a straight shot, will possess a concentrated, complex, smooth flavor, creating a satisfying taste experience. As we discussed in the section on pulling the perfect shot, the rate of extraction, volume produced, and rust-colored crema are the keys to good espresso. Always pull the straight shot directly into a preheated demitasse cup to prolong the life of the crema. The straight shot should be served immediately. The two variations will be the restricted shot, or ristretto, an extraction pulled to 3/4 to 1 ounce, and the lungo, or long shot, cooled to 1 1/4 to 1 1/2 ounces. The lungo will yield a larger volume of espresso, but may tend to produce more astringent flavors. The ristretto is the preferred manner in which the shot of espresso is usually served in Europe. The short, restricted pour magnifies the essence of the coffee, while minimizing any negative flavor characteristics. The espresso macchiato. We start once again with the customer's preferred shot of espresso. Served in a demitasse, the only difference from the straight shot is a small amount of foam milk spooned on top of the shot. The espresso con panna. This is a variation of the macchiato, substituting whipped cream in place of the foamed milk. The Americano. This is a gourmet version of an American-style brewed coffee made with the espresso machine. Hot water is dispensed from the machine into a cup and then topped with the customer's desired shot of espresso. This method produces a smoother and, of course, fresher cup of coffee. Generally, the water directly from the boiler of the espresso machine will produce a much hotter cup of coffee than a conventional brewer. We feel it is wise to inform your customer of this fact. Many Americanos served in paper cups are double cupped for this reason. The cappuccino. Most cappuccinos in Italy are consumed primarily in the mornings. In the United States, it is a popular drink at all times of the day. This is without doubt the most difficult drink to prepare properly. Cold milk is essential, as is expertise in the foaming process. The commonly misprepared beverage, which we refer to as the American restaurant cappuccino, is generally nothing more than coffee with dry, tasteless foam spooned on top. On the other hand, authentic cappuccino is produced with a velvety wet foam, which combines with the espresso upon the pour to create a harmony of the two flavors. Because of the larger volume of foam, it will create a lighter weight drink than the cafe latte, which we will discuss next. Contrary to many products being marketed today, there is no such thing as an iced cappuccino, because foam is the essential component of this drink. In reality, these beverages are iced lattes. The cafe latte. This is the drink that Seattle made famous. It is similar to the cappuccino, but it's made with much less foam and more steamed milk. This can be achieved by holding back the foam with a spoon and pouring a larger volume of milk. The drink should be topped at the end with a small amount of foam. Lattes can also be served over ice. When preparing iced drinks, simply add cold milk directly from the carton. The breve. This is a Seattle-originated term for an extra-rich cafe latte made with half and half instead of milk. The cafe mocha. A variation of the latte is the mocha. This is basically the same drink as the latte, with either chocolate powder or syrup added in the beginning stages of the preparation of the drink. It is important to first add the chocolate with the hot shot of espresso so as to melt and blend the two flavors together. The procedure should be the same with iced mochas, adding the ice after the coffee and chocolate have been blended. Mochas are generally topped with whipped cream. Any of these drinks, lattes, cappuccinos, or mochas, can be garnished with chocolate sprinkles at the customer's request. Flavored-based drinks. Once again, these drinks are modified cafe lattes. Almost any flavored syrup can be added. Some of the more popular flavors are vanilla, Irish cream, almond, hazelnut, and caramel. Some fruit flavors such as orange and raspberry also work well. Add one or more of these flavors in the beginning stages of the drink preparation. Using a consistent portion of the syrup is very important, and remember, the sweetness of a flavored syrup will usually intensify when added to a hot liquid. Flavored lattes work very well over ice and are popular warm weather alternatives.
One important point we should mention is that when adding milk to the espresso, the taste of the coffee will be diluted in proportion to the amount of milk added.
As a rule of thumb, we suggest the following. A single shot will work fine in a 6 to 8 ounce drink. Larger 12 and 16 ounce drinks will require a double shot. The cafe au lait. This is a brewed coffee version of a cafe latte. Start with a 12 to 16 ounce cup. Fill half full with drip brewed coffee and top with steamed milk. Hot chocolate and steamers. These drinks are made like flavored lattes and mochas without the addition of espresso. You may wish to slightly increase the amount of flavoring used to offset the absence of coffee. The steamed milk can be added directly to the flavoring in the cup, or the flavoring can be steamed with the milk. If you add the flavoring to the milk in the steaming pitcher, be sure to discard any remaining milk after you have poured the drink and rinse the pitcher thoroughly. A word of caution: some flavors may cause the milk to curdle if they are overheated in the steaming process. Italian sodas and cremosas. An Italian soda is merely a combination of a flavored syrup and a quality sparkling mineral or soda water. More syrup will usually be used to provide sufficient flavor. A small amount of half and half or heavy cream will be added to create what is known as the cremosa. The cream, or half and half, is generally added last and only gently stirred to create a swirled appearance in the drink. Now let's review the basic espresso bar drinks: the straight shot, the espresso macchiato, the espresso con panna, the Americano, the cappuccino, the cafe latte, the breve, the cafe mocha, the flavored latte, the cafe au lait, hot chocolate, steamers, Italian sodas and cremosas.
The techniques and procedures for preparing wonderful filter drip coffee are much simpler than those involved with espresso. However, there are still basic fundamentals which must be adhered to. Like espresso, good quality coffee beans and well-maintained brewing equipment are basic requirements. Let's now examine the essentials of proper drip brewing.
Always start with fresh, quality, whole bean Arabica coffees. Remember, your coffee will be at its very best if used within 2 to 10 days after roasting. Your coffee brewer needs to deliver brewing water with a consistent temperature of approximately 200 degrees Fahrenheit. The brewer's spray head should provide an even disbursement of water, with enough force to create the necessary agitation of the coffee grounds in the brew basket. Next, grind only as much coffee as you will need for immediate brewing. The minimum amount of ground coffee that should be used for a 6-ounce cup is 10 grams, or about 2 level tablespoons. If you're preparing an 8-ounce cup, 2.5 to 3 tablespoons should be used. When preparing coffee by the pot, use approximately 3.8 ounces for a 64-ounce pot and 4.5 ounces for a 72-ounce pot. Remember, if you do not use a sufficient amount of coffee, the undesirable elements of the bean will be extracted during brewing, creating a very bitter cup. If you or your customers feel that the coffee is too strong in flavor, additional hot water may be added to the finished brew. Do not use less coffee. Make sure that the ground coffee is dispersed evenly in the filter basket. Place the basket back into the machine under the brew head and activate the brewing cycle. The consistency of the grind will need to be determined by the length of the brewing cycle. The goal is to complete the entire brewing cycle within 4 to 6 minutes. Coffee which is ground to the consistency of granulated sugar will usually achieve this result. As with espresso, if the brew cycle is too fast, adjust the grind finer. If the brew cycle is too slow, a coarser grind will be required. Dispose of the used coffee grounds immediately upon the conclusion of brewing. If you are brewing into a glass pot and holding the coffee on a warming burner, your coffee will maintain optimal freshness for no longer than 20 to 30 minutes. Holding coffee in a thermal pot will extend this time to 45 minutes to an hour. After this, you should dispose of any remaining coffee and brew a new pot.
Now here are some additional tips essential to optimal brewed coffee quality.
Always wait for the completion of the brewing cycle before removing the pot. Never combine pots which have been brewed at different times. Never use the extracted grounds for a second brew cycle. Discard paper filters after each use. And never reheat brewed coffee.
Like any good tool, your espresso machine, drip brewer, and grinders will require periodic maintenance to continue to perform at optimum levels. Failure to remove oils and residues from your equipment will result in bitter, undesirable coffee beverages. First, let's talk about your espresso machine.
Each group of your machine should be back-flushed at the end of a day's use. This is accomplished by replacing the perforated filter basket in the portafilter with the solid one provided by most machine manufacturers. Next, add the manufacturer's recommended amount of an espresso machine detergent to the solid basket. Place the portafilter back into the group head and turn on the machine, letting it run for approximately 10 seconds. Remove the portafilter and dispose of the soapy water. Without adding any additional detergent, repeat this process multiple times until the water in the filter basket is free of detergent residue. A few additional backflushes will be necessary to assure that the machine is thoroughly rinsed and ready for use. This backflushing procedure will push water and cleaning solution back through the group screen and a portion of your machine's plumbing, removing residues from those areas. In addition to backflushing, the group screen located in the group head should also be removed and cleaned on a daily basis. Using a small, firm brush, scrub up inside the group head to remove any coffee grounds or residues from the shower head and the rubber gasket which creates the seal with the portafilter. Over time, this gasket will become worn. A good indicator that this gasket needs to be replaced is when the handle of your portafilter returns beyond its normal position and water leaks from around the group when the portafilter is locked in place. Your portafilters and filter baskets are another area where coffee residues will build up quickly. Soak these in a solution of water and espresso machine detergent overnight. Make sure that the plastic portafilter handles are not submerged in this cleaning solution, because this chemical may damage the plastic over a prolonged period of time. In the morning, clean the portafilters with a mild abrasive pad and brush and rinse thoroughly before using. At the end of each shift, open the steam valve for several seconds to eject any milk residues which may have collected in the steaming wand. Clean the wand thoroughly with a clean, damp towel. On a weekly basis, remove the wand tip and clean the inside of the steaming tube with a brush. Soak the wand tip overnight in hot water and remove any obstructions from the jets with a straight pin or a paper clip, then reinstall the tip onto the tube. If water drips from the wand when the valve is fully closed, you will need to have the gasket or valve replaced. Be sure to thoroughly clean the drain grate, drip pan, and wipe clean any splatters or residues from the remaining surfaces of your espresso machine at the end of each day's use. Never use highly abrasive scouring pads on the components of your espresso machine because they may damage the metal plating or ruin the finish. Consistent maintenance to your espresso burr grinder is also very important to the quality of your espresso beverages. On a daily basis, remove and dispose of all remaining ground coffee in the doser. This coffee will be unacceptable for your next day's use. Then simply wipe the entire exterior of the grinder with a clean, damp towel. On a weekly basis, remove the whole beans from the hopper and wash it in hot, soapy water to remove any coffee oils. Be sure to rinse with fresh, clean water. Remove residual coffee grounds from the dosing chamber with a brush and wipe thoroughly with a clean, damp towel. Also, disassemble the grinding mechanism and repeat this process with the burrs and the grinding chamber. Dry all grinder components thoroughly upon the completion of cleaning. The burrs of your grinder will become dull over a period of time and will need to be replaced to maintain optimal results. Typically, flat burrs should be replaced after grinding 500 pounds of coffee. Conical burrs have a longer life and should be replaced after 800 to 1,000 pounds. Analyze your weekly coffee usage to determine when your burrs should be replaced.
Your drip brewer will also require some daily and periodic maintenance to continue to produce wonderful brewed coffee.
On a daily basis, simply wash the brew basket and wipe up around the brew head to remove any coffee residues. On a weekly basis, soak the brew basket overnight in a solution of water and urn cleaner to remove any stubborn buildups. If your brew basket is plastic, read the manufacturer's cleaning recommendations to make sure that the urn cleaner will not have a damaging effect on the plastic. Be sure to rinse the basket thoroughly before using. Another important component to check is your brewer's shower head. Make sure that it produces an even, forceful spray and the holes are free of obstructions. Your bulk bean grinders will require the same type of daily and periodic maintenance as your espresso grinder. Be sure to clean all areas where coffee oils and grounds create residues. Check with your grinder's manufacturer for the recommended interval for replacing burrs. Remember, dull burrs will not produce granules of a consistent size, and the extreme friction created during grinding will result in the overheating of the burrs, which will burn the coffee and release the delicate oils prematurely. It would be wise to call in a qualified service technician once or twice a year to facilitate adjustments and provide preventative maintenance for your equipment. For safety reasons, we do not suggest attempting any internal repairs or adjustments yourself. Be sure to have the technician check your water filtration system at this same time to determine if filter cartridges need to be replaced or recharged. It goes without mention that all utensils, thermometers, and steaming pitchers should be cleaned with hot, soapy water on a daily basis, or more often if necessary. Glass coffee pots, thermal pots, and urns should also be washed thoroughly at the end of each day's use. On a weekly basis, use an urn or coffee pot cleaner and the appropriate brush to remove any residue buildups. If you serve beverages in ceramic cups, an occasional overnight soaking in a coffee cleaning solution will help remove any stubborn coffee stains.
It is always important to remember that your espresso machine and drip brewer are powerful pieces of equipment that produce extreme temperatures. Great care should be taken when extracting coffee, dispensing hot water, and steaming milk so as to avoid serious burn injuries. As you have seen, it takes many elements to produce excellent espresso and brewed coffee beverages. It's obviously important to start with an excellent coffee and to use the proper equipment. But from our experience, we have found that the single most important factor for the success of your specialty coffee operation is the person preparing the coffee, the barista. Adequate and uniform training of each and every employee will ensure that your operation will produce the highest quality beverages possible. It is our opinion that training should not be viewed as a one-time event, but as an ongoing process. Periodic review of this video will prove valuable in maintaining a consistent level of performance. It is important that the true Italian methods of espresso preparation be maintained and nurtured here in the United States. If all the principles of this video are used, studied, and mastered, your coffee operation can produce espresso drinks as wonderful as those found in Italy. We hope you have found the information in this video both educational and useful. We would like to conclude by leaving you with some words of wisdom from Dr. Ernesto Ely, perhaps the world's most renowned and respected authority on coffee and espresso. Ciao.
We must understand that coffee is a love affair. Coffee is not producing good results to people that are having not a direct emotional attachment to coffee. You must love what you do. The espresso that you serve or the cappuccino that you serve must be simply perfect. The foam, the texture of the foam of an espresso or a cappuccino must be perfect. The most important thing to remember is consumers do not come back because the ambience is beautiful or elegant. They come back and more and more and more in bigger numbers if the cup content is perfect. If you have a wonderful cappuccino, if you have a wonderful cup of espresso, you will see smiling consumer coming back. So if you have no complaints, it is not enough. Look at the faces, look in the eyes of your consumer, look to their smiles. If they smile, they will come back.
Immediately following these credits, find out about other fine products and services available from Bellissimo.